Thanks and welcome to my channel. This video is what would happen if Russia and China did a joint strike, nuclear strike on the United States, and how potentially damaging could it be. So I have placed in the simulator a lot of people in some major population centers and some not so major population centers. So we'll see what effects they've had on this. I have pre-positioned Russian and Chinese naval assets around the United States. These have a more limited range on some of them. So some of the Russian ones, especially the Russian surface ships, are going to be nuclear-tipped cruise missiles, and there's going to be some sub-launch cruise missiles. But the idea is that this is not necessarily meant to be realistic. You know, the Chinese subs are actually fairly loud, and they don't really venture out past their kind of safe zones. So, but we want to kind of look at what's worst case, right? Maybe this is following a Chinese-U.S. War in the South China Sea, and U.S. naval and air assets have been depleted. Maybe this is just whatever. But the idea is to look at what's kind of our worst case scenario here. Also, I have eliminated any U.S. bases outside of the 50 states. So no territories, no European or Southeast Asia deployments. In the Middle East, we have U.S. bases all over the place. So this is really meant to see an impact on the U.S. mainland. So let's kind of take a look here. We're going to start a little slow, but what we're going to first see is ICBM silos are going to start to launch. Then we're going to see the subs. We're already seeing them light up now. And then we will start to see some of the mobile launchers. So it's all going to start happening. Say that these are accurate forces to 2024 based on the Federation of Atomic Scientists estimates on what's actually deployed. So this isn't total stockpile. This is what's actually deployed, with some caveats that China doesn't necessarily have warheads on all their missiles, but they can deploy those warheads in a fairly short order. But this isn't taking in a total stockpile of stuff that's in storage, process of being retired. Also, I do include the SARMATs for the Russian side. I do not include, for people ask, the Poseidon weapon system, because this isn't, that'd be a fantasy movie. So I've got a video on that, but Poseidon is nothing more than an underwater drone. It's not fitted with a 100 megaton warhead, and it's more likely maybe a 2 megaton warhead, and doesn't represent any capabilities that Russia doesn't already have and possess. So we're seeing them come in. This is again the initial naval assets here. We're going to see there's a much larger number coming in from all the launchers. And apologies because you're not going to be able to see Alaska and Hawaii, unfortunately, just due to limitations. But they're going to be getting as viable targets and getting strikes as well. We have plenty of military assets. In fact, Alaska has one of our 2 locations. We have deployed the ground-based mid-course interceptor. If you're unfamiliar with anti-ballistic missile systems, ground-based mid-course interceptor is the only U.S.-based missile defense system designed to intercept intercontinental ballistic missiles. So there's 44 interceptor missiles. They're working on increasing that number. That's a small drop in the bucket compared to the nuclear forces of even China, which has much less than, say the United States and Russia. Now, we do have other weapon systems. We have the THAAD that's designed to take out intermediate range ballistic missiles in the terminal phase versus the ground-based mid-course interceptor, which takes out a mid-course. You know about ballistic missile, there's basically three phases. Just to keep very simple, high level, when the missile's going up into out of the atmosphere, it's first phase. Second phase is when it's traveling around. And third phase is when it descends to the terminal phase to the ground. When it's descending, it's traveling extremely fast. So a lot of times people talk about hypersonic missiles and everything. All ICBMs and other such things are hypersonic. They're just not able to change course, glide. That's really what hypersonic missiles we're talking about, is able to change course during that descent. So here we see coming in a ton of warheads. And again, I know, anybody that's more knowledgeable in the subject, I'm doing a very knuckle dragger description of it. So, and I want to apologize for anybody's, some of my regular viewers haven't been able to make a video. I'm going to put out a video either later or tomorrow, one of my rambling rants videos, and it's going to talk about kind of current situation here. But video content may be kind of intermittent for about the next month and a half or so. Some big stuff I've talked about, just said that sometime soon there's going to be some big announcements on my end. All right. One of the comments I had on one of my videos recently, this guy went through and made several comments, and basically same overarching thing. Any nuclear war, everybody's going to die. Even one where it was just Russian tactical strikes on NATO bases. And I didn't even respond. I'll respond to most comments, but I'm just like, what do you say to somebody like that? They made up in their mind that every human's going to die if there's any type of nuclear exchange whatsoever. It's set out of complete ignorance. It doesn't match with what anybody says that really knows. Would the losses be high? Yes, losses would be extremely high. But the idea that all of humanity would be wiped out is falsehood. We've survived worse things in our history. So, let me check and make sure we're good. So we still got the cruise missiles here coming in. They're going to take a little bit longer. They travel slower, more close to the ground. If you're a DCS world aficionado, visually about cruise missiles and their time to strike. Okay, I think that's everything. No. Don't forget the strategic bombers with their cruise missiles and nuclear tip cruise missiles. So, no, that's everything. This is about 24-hour time period. So, start to calculate the casualties, then we'll look at some of the individual people that I placed and see. We're seeing a lot of red, but just because it's yellow or green doesn't mean they're surviving. Okay. 56 million U.S. losses, about 370,000 Canadian. Puerto Rico, 186,000. Mexico is going to have 50,000 and roughly a half, right, from fallout, stuff along the border. And when I say that 56 million on U.S. casualties was, of course, just during the initial strikes. It's not looking at long term. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the people, and then I'll give an assessment on a very quick, high-level assessment on what I think their prognosis is. Let's take a look at this person right here. Oops. Last video I did was something like this. I accidentally had this off screen so people couldn't see what I was talking about. It's unfortunate. So it says light injuries from flying glass and debris. All these people I said is in a one-story building. This would be Detroit. Now, whereas she has light injuries, probably wouldn't be fatal because even with the lack of medical care, we're talking cuts, scrapes, and bruises. Let's see where the actual... There'd been a small impact, but she's outside the major impact zones. So, here's the thing though. Major impact zones. South, north, fallout. So between the fallout, the roving bands of probably survivors that that are going to be starving to death because there's going to be no food and no supplies coming in, she'll probably be killed anyways, more than likely. So even though she would survive and be good survival prognosis, she wouldn't last much longer than that. So let's take a look. I'm not going to go through everybody, but let's just take a look at a few. Crushed by a collapsed building, so she's dead. That's in Chicago. She's right there and she'd be right there in a strike, so there's very little opportunity. Let's take a look. Columbus. Nothing. So, major strike happened near Rickenbacker Air Base in Columbus. Interesting. Well, no, I wouldn't say interesting because there is a major air base in Dayton, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, but Dayton got 2 strikes. Didn't really hit Columbus. Good chance of survival. Much of the city would be still intact, so she would probably survive for quite a while, but disease will spread. Starvation would set in, but I think for the first several weeks or months, she may be all right. Let's take a look. Lexington, 3rd-degree burns. All layers of exposed skin destroyed. High probability of infection and death without intensive care. This is right in a blast radius. She's not going to receive any medical care. Medical systems will be completely overwhelmed, and people aren't going to be, hopping up and down. There won't be enough people with suits to even try to access these fallout areas. She's dead, no matter, without a doubt. Let's see here. Let's take a look at Atlanta. So this will be an interesting one. So it's another person who got kind of lucky, relatively speaking, strikes, but kind of missed the main story there. So no major things. Having said that, got a lot of fallout, strikes around the city. I'd say a lot of strikes around the city, but definitely fallout all around the city. He'd be in a very precarious position. So I would have my doubts that he would probably survive after the first few weeks. Unless, depending on circumstances. But you would see food would dry up relatively fast. And people in these areas more affected if they survive, at least for the first couple weeks. They're going to probably try to get to areas less affected. And they're going to be starving, hungry, hurt, and desperate. So, let's take a look. Let's look at Los Angeles, City of Angels. So again, this person, low chance of death from infections within 6 to 8 weeks. Long-term reduction of white blood cells. They're still in a heavily fallouted area, strikes around them, they'd be dead. They would die. So even if the infections didn't get them, lack of food, clean water, other stuff, they'd die. Everybody would be probably trying to get more this way or this way into these areas that are be clean and maybe going right over top of her. It's going to be survival of the fittest in these circumstances a lot of times. So, take a look at this person, San Francisco, killed in the fires, dead. So a lot of these people that are still necessarily survive these may not be surviving them for very long. Might be okay. So, potentially. But again, you'd have nearby people affected, nearby people, and food would be hard to get into this area. So, hard to say. Let me see. Another story. Anybody buy silos, just outright dead. Trying to see if there's one that I would say would be more higher probability of surviving. And again, this is very quick assessments. Maybe. By sea, be a little bit easier to be resupplied. That person could survive, potentially. Cleveland. I mean, would you want to, even if you could? Come on, it's Cleveland. Cleveland. New York. Interestingly, yeah, they say another one with 6 to 8 weeks, low chance to die from infections. He'd be dead. So there's just, he wouldn't have made it. You know, he was just outside the main blast zones, but people would probably be eating them for breakfast at that point. Always, you know, it's a meme that floats around. Look at a picture on these Black Friday sales. If you're in the United States, Black Friday is the day after Thanksgiving, where stores do these crazy sales. Watch people fighting over TVs. So imagine when food and water runs out, how these people are going to act. It's not going to be pretty. And so, anybody in a more urban environment with a lot of people, and there's no, not going to be a real good opportunity, to live off the land. Even in rural areas, living off the land is not nearly as easy as people thought. There was that bomber guy, Eric Rudolph, and everyone talked about how much of a survivalist he was, and he could live off the land, and come to find out he survived basically just dumpster diving. It's not easy. There's not, to live off the land. And people in those more rural areas are going to probably do whatever they can to try to protect themselves and protect what they have, and not all those areas are going to be scot-free because, they may still be affected by nuclear strikes, numerous other things, fallout. Now, there would be large swaths of area that would be relatively unaffected. But it's not going to sustain, population of people moving into those areas. So that's why nuclear weapons are something that shouldn't be used. Again, high level, not the most realistic scenario. If you want to see a more realistic one, check my World War III. It's over a 3-week time period. It's what I consider more realistic escalation, and involves multiple nations, multiple theaters. Links are in the description. So check that out. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.